Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to Conscious 2. My guest in the studio today is Steve Beckett. Hi, Steve.
Hi there, Alex.
And Steve is the founder of Warp Records and the Warp Group, which includes film and music publishing. And he's also an integral coach working with businesses using integral practices and ideas. And in today's interview, we're going to explore the theme of conscious business. So where inner practice and consciousness meets the world of business and career and that area. So Steve, maybe as a starting point to this, how did your own inner path, inner practice start?
Yeah, I've got a really clear starting point for my spiritual practice, maybe quite unusually. I'd been running my businesses with my business partner, Rob Mitchell, since 1989. Mm-hmm. And then in 2001, my business partner, Rob, got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Wow.
And quite rapidly, over about a 6-month period, got more and more ill, and then passed away. And it was literally, that was the before and after moment for my spiritual path. So before that point, I had no real interest in spirituality. I'd had some interest in things like philosophy, reading, Camus and Sartre and things like that, but it was more this, I was more interested in art and culture and creativity and actually creating the businesses that we'd started to create by that point. And then I was with him, felt like I was really supporting him through that period of illness. And then I was actually with him at the moment of death. And it was really, I just see that as such a before and after moment. The way I relate to it, it's almost like the mirror image of seeing a birth. So there's something extremely sacred about it for me. And it was literally as if whatever the life force that was, being him, had suddenly was not there anymore in that physical body. It was literally like something had just left out of the top of his head. And I just remember sitting back and thinking, wow, is that it?
Yeah.
Is that really what I've been so afraid of, or something like that?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
What you've been so afraid of that you then weren't afraid of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what was so amazing. Wow. It was just in an instant kind of thing. And then over a few weeks period, I was helping his family, organising the funeral and things like that. And then afterwards, it was such a huge event for me that I then went up to the Outer Hebrides in Scotland, just off the coast of Scotland. And my sister had booked a small place for me to stay there. Mm-hmm. And then out of the woodwork, all these different people had given me all these different books that I barely remember them giving me them. So somebody had given me the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. Huh. Somebody else had given me Carlos Castaneda, Active Side of Infinity. My sister gave me a CD full of David Whyte poetry. I don't know if you know his stuff. It's just incredible. Yeah. And then another massive book for me that my friend Amanda had given me was Ken Wilber, Brief History of Everything. Amazing. So I was up there in this total retreat, nobody around whatsoever, just surrounded by beautiful nature and deers walking in front of me and eagles flying around kind of thing. So I was just in this unbelievable retreat setting. And then at night I was having these progressive dreams about my partner, where it was almost like we were going through normal business processes. And I was kind of explaining to him, just going, Rob, why are you talking to me about, these invoices or setting these meetings? Do you realize you've died? And he was going, what the hell are you talking about? Because you've died, Rob, you've died. And then this kept happening every single night. And then on the last night, it was completely different, and he was climbing up this ladder. And he looked down at me, I goes, do you realize you've died now? And he goes, yeah. And then turned around and just walked up the ladder. And I woke up in the middle of the night, and all this, the rain was coming down on this tiny little, and it was just this tiny place. It was just such an incredible, sacred experience for me. And then during the day, I was just going on these huge, long walks. I was starting to feel and see energies in nature and energies coming out of mountains and things like that. I started spontaneously meditating. I'd never meditated in my life before.
Had any instruction of how to meditate?
Nothing at all, no. Just started sitting, yeah. And then I just remember it was like my mind was just dropping, like less and less thoughts. So I was getting out in nature with this really silent mind for maybe the first time in my life, you know. And it was just, I was starting to experience the sort of sacred nature of being alive. And then I was hearing all this David Whyte poetry and reading all these amazing books. And one of them was the Ken Wilber book, and he was just describing this stage of development, which he calls flatland. And it's almost like when you get into a point where it's almost like you're giving up and you think you've seen and done everything. Rather than that being the end point, it's actually a springboard into this next level, into a sort of transpersonal level. And I just remember reading that page, and it was like, wow, this is where I'm at.
And as this was all happening, was there a sense of, at the time, my God, this is incredible, this is amazing, or was there just a kind of, you were just in the experience, like it was just kind of unfolding in itself?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was like. It was like I was suddenly in a current, and this current was taking me somewhere that I didn't have any idea where it was taking me whatsoever. And at the same time, there was a kind of fear to it, but it was more just a deep trust about, wow, this is something's happening here that's profound, and being interested in where it's going to take me.
And when you were there for a few weeks?
10 days, yeah.
So when you came back to your kind of life, let's say your kind of business life, London life, that kind of thing, how was that? I mean, to kind of go from, the intensity of the kind of depth and the kind of beauty of that, but the intensity to that space, to then hitting the... How was that integration for you?
Well, obviously it was difficult because I'm not only had these experiences, but then I was going back to a business that before, for 12 years, has had my partner with me every day. That was like it was like a brother to me, basically, in that business. So suddenly it's taking on all that and starting to try and take on different roles that you hadn't been taking on before. So that I found that very difficult. And at the same time, there was, the sort of, what do you call it, just the taste of something new coming, that I wanted to start walking this path. So I'd got involved in, just, again, randomly, somebody had said, oh, you need to do this weekend workshop. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll try it. I never did stuff like that, but I went to try it. And it was one of these kind of confrontational groups where you go in and the guy walks in and goes... by the end of this weekend, everybody in this room is going to be dead. And seeing I'm already dead, that just leaves you. And we're like, what? And it was this whole first taste of like really going into the ego, as they called it then. It's very based around the Castaneda work and seeing the stories you're running and things like that. Yeah. So again, I'd come back and that weekend kind of pulled the rug out of my reality. And a lot of... again, the mind just kind of dropped off, and I had this experience of a kind of 24-hour satori, for want of a better word, where there was just no mind whatsoever, and I was just felt like I was really coming from a being space. So yeah, my system was just getting blown apart left, right, and center, and then I'm having to come back into the work situation and try and function in the world. So that period, initially, before I got used to it, was really, really difficult. Yeah,
because I think for people kind of that are fairly rooted in worldly life, some people, they step away from worldly life and have their kind of spiritual kind of experiences. But when you're firmly rooted, especially if you're running a business and you've got responsibilities, you can't just kind of abandon that, as it were. It's like having a job, you just quit your job, you're staying with that. I think having those inner experiences, those kind of those moments of awakening, and then coming back, in those experiences, it's quieter, it's simpler, it's more spacious. You're almost seeking more of that. And then you come back and there's noise, there's complexity, there's problems to be solved.
Yeah.
How was that trying to integrate those
Yeah.
two places for you?
Well, I think at first it was really, really tough, and I think most people who've had any experience of that also experience that as being difficult. You know, I think that after workshops, people often describe it as the rubber band effect, where you just feel completely blown apart and expansive, and then you've got to come back into the constraints of so-called worldly life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did find the whole noise and things like that difficult, but the main thing I found difficult was it just felt like the heart opens to such a great extent, and then you're going in and you sort of, going into workspace with the people that work for you, and you're kind of feeling all their pain and things like that, and all you want to do is go up and hug them and say if everything's all right, and you've got to talk to them about some, production deadline and things like that. So I think...
Right. And it says sometimes even harder than that. It's like you've gone from having this deep heart connections to you've got to go and basically give someone a kick in the arse and tell them their work's not good enough, or they need to raise their standard, or they're not going to hit the deadline, or they're on an official warning. Mm-hmm. And it's like one thing's working to open your heart, and the other thing you're having to put this armor in place to kind of. I don't know what supported you in navigating through.
That's a good question, actually.
And that may have come later, with kind of more understanding or more kind of experience.
Well, I think the thing that supported me, is a number of things. Firstly, start getting a sangha of community where you can actually at least be talking to the people outside the workspace about how difficult you're experiencing the workspace.
Yeah.
Secondly, just great literature out there that says, this is totally natural, and it's something that you can begin to work with and develop. So again, the integral teachings of Wilbur, I just thought amazing for putting different contexts on work. So you can start, what I began to realize, firstly, starting to experience a deep trust in where it was taking me. And then secondly, the big one for me was realizing that the two aren't mutually exclusive, they're one and the same thing. So it's not that, and I think that's the key thing for me. So it's not that I need to go and be spiritual outside work, and then I come back and there's work and they're different. It's one and the same thing. So you can access spirit through any portal. Basically, there's no separation. If you get down to a deep enough level. And then what I became more and more interested in is why I got into coaching and leadership development. Is similar question which you're in, which is exactly why I'm here, which is how can you bring that consciousness in more of a conscious way or more of an awake way into the workplace, because I just started realizing, rather than getting out of business, seeing how business basically just affects the whole planet, if you can start bringing more higher and higher levels of awakeness into corporations and businesses, then you've got a chance of really shifting the consciousness of the planet. So that was something that really lit me up and is still lighting me up, today.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I always feel is really sad is that people have awakening experiences, and then they see the business world as not being awake or being, repressive or whatever the perspective is. So they leave the business world, and then what ends up happening is the very people that are needed to transform the business world are actually leaving the business world. And I want to. There's a few things I want to kind of go into a bit more. One of the things you said, it was the importance of having your kind of sangha, having your kind of community of people, and it strikes me that's immensely important, because otherwise it's like everyone around us is actually supporting us regressing to where to how the worldview, let's say, or how we were before. And what role did having that Sangha community, how did that support you? Or, you mentioned, for example, being able to kind of just talk about the struggles. I don't know if you can say more about how that helped, or the kind of role it played.
Well, I think there's a, I don't know, it's a mystery in a way, but there's a power to just having your story witnessed. From time immemorial, people, if they can talk about whatever issues they're having, if that story can just be witnessed, it's got like a healing element to it. So for me, especially people not trying to fix it or giving you solutions or telling you what you should or shouldn't be doing, but literally just that holding, witnessing of what you're up against, I find begins to liberate something, because you start seeing that actually it might not be a problem, it's just part of your story and part of your journey. So to me, just having that Sangha, and I've still got a strong Sangha of practitioners, having that ability to, an opportunity to just share whatever you're up against it can be the simplest thing, like I'm having trouble getting a parking space or something like that. You know, don't think it's got to be spiritual, but just anything that's going on for you, and really naming what your reality is, to me, just has a very powerful effect on my nervous system or something like that. So I think that, in just on its own, is an aspect of building resilience. So I think as leaders, we have to build our own resilience, and I think one of those is by us putting teams of people or support in place for us so that we can do the world, so be in the world of the workplace. You know, so for me, it's more like a yoga. So now I know that I've got my own practice or my own space or my community that I can go in and be vast, and then I know that in terms of service in the world, I might have to come and close down a bit and just meet the person exactly where they are, rather than trying to, squash my vastness or whatever it is on them, which doesn't serve them.
Right, and of course that place of being open or closing also being okay, because I think you were saying that kind of rubber band effect. I think one of the things that can happen is it's like there's the expansion followed by the contraction, and then there's a whole story about the contraction and how frustrating it is, which then just feeds more contraction around it. So it sounds like you developed a capacity to be more fluid with the kind of movements in terms of what was happening.
Because if you're just attached to openness and vastness, it's almost like saying, I just need it to be sunny all the time. And then as soon as it's not sunny, you're going, it needs to be sunny, it needs to, why is it raining, why is it? But it's not, it's a natural process, the opening and closing. It's not that you have to, the fact that you can be aware of it and conscious about it and go, okay, it seems like I'm closing now in the face of this. Whatever it is that's witnessing that closing, that's what you're kind of resting in, and that's where the freedom always comes, even when you've got really tight constraints, in my experience.
Yes, yeah. And I was also wondering, have there been particular daily practices or practices that you've used in your life that have supported integration? I know that you've been quite heavily involved in the Waking Down community, for example.
Yeah.
I don't know anything you can say around what's happened in retreats or workshops integrate into your life.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I've got a. To me, the whole thing of practice is very fluid and changes. I think I always get worried when not worried, but I think if you've just got one set of practices for your whole lifetime, it's not necessarily going to serve you, because the being is just constantly changing and evolving.
And the need changes. Yeah.
So if I look back 10 years ago, what I was doing then was very different to what I'm doing now. There's one thing in Waking Down that I really like, a phrase which is grasp the means of your own realization. And it's this thing of really starting to follow the dynamics of your own being and getting tuned into that. And that's what starts guiding where your practices are going to go, rather than how it used to be for me, where I would read usually Ken Wilber, and go, okay, I need to sit for 10,000 hours, and I need to do shadow work, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. So now I'd say my practice at the moment is much more feminine and just flowing with whatever goes. So for me at the moment, it's much more about rest and relaxation, following desire, pleasure, enjoyment, that kind of thing. All the things that I used to, try and disassociate from and just be in this empty, non-attached place, is complete opposite now. So, and I'm sure that'll change again. There was a few years ago when I was doing a lot of men's work, and it was all about purpose and working. I've done years of working with a body in all different dimensions. So I don't see it as one set of practice. I see this constantly flowing and changing thing. And I think it's so important for people to get in tune for that, about what is it that is going to serve me now, what is it that I need at the moment, and then go into that and let that, and that's part of the life guiding you and taking you, and that's exciting to me.
Yeah, I really like what you're saying. I think that's certainly been my experience as well. It's just different practices and a different relationship to different practices being appropriate at certain points. I was wondering about, you've obviously, there's been a real depth of commitment in your life of making time and space to different things. Is that something which has been difficult with the kind of demands of your professional life? Is it something where you've had to kind of carve time out, or is it how has that been for you?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had to carve time out, but again, I find that it swings. So at the moment, I'm in a space where I've took a lot of space and really backed off, and I've got hours and hours in a day where I'm following what I want to follow. But then at the first half of this year, I was working at the levels that I just can't believe I worked at, getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning, working every weekend, loads of travel and that kind of thing. So again, I find that varies. But through doing this work, I find that it's not that you always need space, because if you're resting in space, even though on the outside it might look like you're being very frenetic and moving very quickly, your interior experience of that is this sort of timeless space that actually gives you, I constantly get feedback like, how the hell are you doing the amount of things that you're doing? And from my interior experience, it doesn't feel like I'm really doing anything. It much more feels like I'm in this being space. I'm imagining and visioning what's emerging and then following that. So my interior experience of it is actually quite slow, even on the outside, if it looks like I'm going at the speed of light kind of thing. So I think this is one of the things that starts coming online with spiritual experiences, spiritual practices. It's not about just doing that so you can have the spiritual experience. It's actually starts being useful in, I think, any way that you use them. But in my way, it was using them in businesses. So I can see huge positive changes in the way that I am in work now.
Yes.
If I look back to before my spiritual practice, I used to be there, having to have massages of my neck because I was just getting so caught up in all the detail and concerned about how things were going. A lot of fear about things, and all that's just completely. It's almost laughable for me to think that I could get in those states, but I can think of the 12 years from starting the business to when that happened, that I was constantly in states like that.
I really like what you're saying about being able to be dynamic, busy, and there be space within that. Because I think often the perception people have is they see spiritual practice as people doing a lot of meditation, a lot of inquiry, or a lot of whatever, but it's a slowing down. Yeah. And I think therefore the assumption people have is, if you're going fast, you must therefore not be in a state of spaciousness. Yeah. But of course, facing the global challenges that we face at this point in time, going slow probably isn't going to be a very effective way to deal with those. Yeah. And I don't know if you... And
complexity as well. There's a lot of complexity that's going to be needed for leaders of the future. So it's not about everything being simple. You do have to actually bring complex thinking to issues that are getting more and more complex to solve. So I think that starts coming online with spiritual practice as well. And I think there is this, and you often see it, people that sort of in the worldly dimensions don't have much access to the spiritual world, but quite often you see people in the spiritual world don't really have much way of earning a decent living and doing all the paying the bills kind of thing. So I think it's really important that the two merge together, and I think that's where the answers are going to come from for the whatever the next development is for the planet.
Yeah, I think so too. And I was wondering also if there's something you might want to say around, you kind of alluded to there. I think there can be a thing where a lot of people, they're on their spiritual path and they kind of engage with work in a kind of somewhat reluctant kind of fashion because it funds them doing their retreats or whatever else, or supporting their family. But there's something you can say about the potential of business or conscious business or leadership in business to better the planet, to deal with some of the global crises, be it climate change or the economic challenges, but those kind of global issues, how you see conscious people in business having a potential to really serve through the work that they're doing.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that, I was saying right at the start of this conversation, that, I mean, this might not be the way it happens, but I think I was talking to my wife about this. So imagine if the executive board of McDonald's become more awake and suddenly realize actually what we're doing isn't really helping the planet or helping the people in the planet. Wow, we've got such a responsibility here now that we're awake.
And so much power.
Yeah. What can we do? Oh, we can just start shifting the way that we're running this business and make it have less impact on the planet in an instant. And we can start changing the whole diet of the planet and reduce diabetes, heart attack, all that kind of thing. So that might seem pie in the sky, but that opportunity is there, basically in every business on the planet. And as they start, and it's going to happen anyway, but with more and more help and more facilitation, it'll happen quicker. So all these different business leaders in different organizations can start making a difference to the planet, a difference to the people working in their businesses. And you're already starting to see that in some of the businesses. You go into Google and it's more like going into a 5-star spa where people are getting massages and yoga and skateboarding and that kind of thing. So people, with that vision are starting to bring it into businesses, and it will take time and it'll happen gradually. But that's absolutely my vision for what could happen, and then we can start walking through cities that are just covered in greenery, and we get the green cars, and it just seems, it's so obvious to me, and I think it's so obvious to other people who have woken up to this. So then it's just like, okay, the hard yards now, or the hard work is actually going into those organizations rather than backing off from them and criticizing them. Having conversations with these usually amazing, intelligent, bright people who maybe just haven't woken up to this higher level, and starting making the changes. So that's my hope and for the future, and I think it's totally possible and is already happening.
Yeah, and we've got kind of a minute or so left, but just I'd be really curious just to touch on that a little bit more. That we were saying a bit earlier that we have people which become more conscious and they want to leave organisations because it doesn't feel so supportive. Is there anything you can say, perhaps in the work that you do as an integral coach, that someone that's working within an organisation where management or the people around them are pretty kind of unevolved, it's not a great word, but kind of unevolved in the way they're seeing things, how can someone start to challenge some of that thinking or some of those ideas in a constructive way rather than a confrontational way? How can someone start those dialogues?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think a lot of the time people assume that, the only way that you can make those changes is by the leaders. And I think the difficult thing is when you're not the leader and you haven't necessarily got the control over all those decisions. But I really see that everybody is a leader or can show leadership in any situation they're in. And you hear that all the time. So you start bringing in some initiative. And we saw that in our company, where you just start, somebody goes, look, what are we doing with this recycling thing? It's crazy. Can I go and research that? Because usually it's just because people haven't got the time or the awareness. Can I do that? Take that initiative on and make something happen. And I think it's not thinking you've got to do everything. See what it is that you're personally, because I really believe that thing that everybody's got this unique purpose or reason why we're here. So just tune into what it is that you really want to see change. Might even be the tiniest thing in a company, and just start bringing that in. Or create once a month, start bringing food in, and you all eat together, like a family, rather than everybody eating at the computer. Any small change like that, and it starts having a ripple effect through the organisation. So I'd say that would be the first thing. Yeah,
that's really great. And if someone wants to explore more of what you're doing, especially your work as an integral coach, is a website? Can you give that?
Yeah, if you just go to integralcoaching.org.uk, that's where all the details about me are.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve.
Thanks very much, Alex.
It's been a dialogue I've been really itching to have on Conscious too, so I'm really glad to talk to you about it. Thank you very much. Great. And thank you for watching, and look forward to talking to you again, hopefully very soon. Bye-bye.